Can I respectfully ask you to please rise? All right. On that note, we have a distinguished panel in front of us. Can we have the presentation? This panel will be focused on not discussing if state electricity markets are viable or not. I think we've crossed that bridge. It's now to talk on the nitty-gritty of it, right? It's no longer theory again that we'll have state electricity markets. It is now in play. So what my presentation will do is to give an oversight as to where things are today. Unfortunately, my panelists can't see, but don't worry, you catch it. And my name remains Odion Moffman, CEO, New Hampshire Capital. By the way, we're investors. We have investments in the sector. We've made significant investments. I would like to recognize some other investors in the market. I think I saw Mojek somewhere. So let me also recognize the GMD of Mojek, who she's over there. So Mojek, please. Okay. Next slide, please. The background to where we are today is pretty straightforward. There was first an amendment of the 1999 Constitution, or rather an alteration. And that alteration removed the ambiguity that had prevailed prior to when the EA was passed. And what that amendment did, very simple amendment by the way, was to remove every hindrance to state participation in electricity within their territories, right? And it's very interesting, it was just one simple word that had constrained states from taking full charge of the electricity market. Following from that amendment, we then had the passage of the Electricity Act 2023. And like I said, the two gentlemen I mentioned, they were very instrumental in pushing that bill and making sure that states had full privileges in controlling their market. The Electricity Act 2023 replaces what was passed in 2005, which is the Electric Power Sector Reform Act, right? And what the EA now did was to align the existing electricity laws with the provisions of the Constitution, and effectively recognized and decentralized the legal, policy, and regulatory responsibilities for electricity, allowing states the authority to develop, regulate, and oversee their electricity markets within their territories. And what we think also does, it promotes efficient and localized governance in electricity management, enabling states to respond effectively to their specific energy requirements. As a summary, a number of states have crossed this bridge, but I think it's important that we reiterate how do you get to a point where, as a state, you can now oversee your electricity market. And the steps are pretty straightforward. The very first step, can we have the next slide? Yes. The very first step is, as a state, you must have passed your electricity law. In fact, that's what the Constitution says. State House of Assembly have the right to pass your electricity law that governs generation, transmission, distribution. Commissioner Daffy was very, very apt in summarizing what states can do, right? And so that's the first thing. And your law must, well, not must, but your law must make provision for creating a regulatory agency, right, to regulate that market. If you're going to have a market, then you should have somebody to regulate it. So we think your law should have that. And the second process is, having passed your law and maybe created your state regulator or agency, or however it's known, a body to oversee the state market, you will then write a formal notice to NERC, write a formal notice to the BP and then the NCP, just notifying them of the actions you've taken. And the Electricity Act mandate puts a time frame sets a time period for NEC to issue a transition order that starts the transition process. The transition process is for 6 months, effective 6 months, and within that 6 months, a number of steps should happen. We will discuss the steps and what should happen in the panel. And at the end of the 6 months, right, the state then take full charge of the electricity market. Now, it's important to clarify that TCN, Transmission Company of Nigeria, anything that has interstate affiliations, you cannot regulate, or is not under the purview of the state electricity market. So you can only regulate what is generated, transmitted, distributed solely or wholly within the state boundaries, right? And that's why there is need to have that interface with the federal government and with NERC to make sure interstate transactions or trading can happen. Where are we today from a subnational perspective? Next slide. So we have 4 buckets. Sorry, you can't see because of the panelists seated. The first blue bucket, you have states that have passed the electricity laws. We've got Enugu, Ekiti. By the way, if your state is not here, this is also a place to, this is also to get feedback as well and tell us what you're doing. Enugu, Ekiti, Ondo, Imo, Oyo, Edo, Kogi, Plateau, Ogun, Ebonyi, Taraba, Delta, and Lagos State. These are the states that have electricity laws or have passed, that the houses of assemblies have passed their laws. And from that first bucket, you will then transition to the second bucket, which is states that have taken steps to notify NERC about the electricity laws and the need for them to take over electricity regulations within their markets. And we've got Enugu, Ekiti, Ondo, Imo, Oyo, Edo, Kogi. The third bucket consists of states that have received the transition orders or notices from NERC, effectively starting the transition process and getting to a point where they get to fully create the electricity market. Again, Enugu, Ekiti, Ondo, Imo, Oyo, Edo, Kogi, they're in that bucket. And the last bucket, right, are states that are now fully in charge of their state electricity markets. For now, only 3 states are in that bucket: Enugu, Ekiti, Ondo. As Commissioner Daffy had said, the next set of states programmed to be in that bucket will be Oyo, Imo, and Edo, I think in that order, if I'm not mistaken. Kogi is lined up, and and Imo as well, yeah. Oh, Imo first. Imo, Oyo, and Edo are the next set of states that will transition to that. That will be in the last bucket. Now, the idea, or what we want to see, is more states moving from bucket 1 all the way to bucket 4. Right? But you must be mindful of the things that, as a state, you would have to do to get to that bucket 4. I guess that first step is make your electricity laws. So in terms of where things are today, right? Next slide, please. You just keep clicking because it's, yes. So we have an emerging landscape in the NESI as we first knew it. The top green part has the wholesale market, which has the Federal Ministry of Power as the policy arm, and then NERC as the central national regulator. Obviously, they can regulate successor GENCOs, TCN, the successor DISCOs, the interstate operations of successor DISCOs, MBET. They can set the wholesale tariff, interconnection agreements, all other things that will have interstate implications or obligations. And then below it, which is now the emerging landscape, are the state electricity markets, which the state ministries of power or energy are the policy arm of this market. And you have the state electricity regulatory commissions or bureaus or agencies, as you may name them in your laws, being the regulatory side of things. And it's very clear what your state can regulate. You can regulate everything within your state, provided there are no interstate transactions or connections that are contemplated, right? MD of REA is here. One of the things we've discussed are the REA programs, rural electrification programs. Which bucket does it fall into? Who should take charge of it? How will this work? We'll talk about the implications going forward. But rural electrification is obviously 100% under the purviews of state electricity markets. And I'm glad that the REA MD is here. Not only him, the ED is also here as well. And so we hope for a better synergy of both the state and the REA going forward. Next slide. So there's some couple of transition issues which are emerging, and again, which I feel we need to highlight here. First, during the transition, we've gotten feedback from states saying, okay, what do we do having gotten the transition? Not all states, a few states have come to say, okay, what exactly do we need to do? And I think that 6 months transition process will enable the states properly set up their regulatory commission, develop their local regulations and frameworks that is aligned to the national standards, frameworks, laws, and co. And then there's also that engagement with stakeholders, including the DISCOs, particularly DISCOs that operate within your state. Very important. At this point in time, there are also engagements with consumers and investors. A number of investors have actually approached states, and they're already discussing with states how they will become market participants in state electricity markets. Like we said, Enugu, Ekiti, and Ongudo, they've concluded their transition period. They've taken full charge of their market. But in terms of making sure the transition issues are a lot more smoothing, right? We think there's a need for more oversight of the transition process from NERC. And it's not about NERC dictating to states, by the way. It's more of oversight the formation of subcos by the DISCOs. Very important, because take for instance, you have BEDC, Benin Electricity Distribution Company, covers 4 states. Ondo and Ekiti control their market. Edo and Delta are yet to control. So you have that whole sectionalizing of the DISCOs. I won't call it balkanizing, but it's very clear that NERC needs to oversight that whole process where the successor DISCOs are creating the subcos. We think NERC should engage more with the SECs, and thank you very much. Daf has also mentioned it. There will be some engagement next week. So that's positive. We think NERC should set up internal structures within NERC itself to manage the transition, so that states that need clarity, states that want to understand better, there's a desk or a resource within NERC they can get this information. Very critical, so that this hand-holding process, I call it hand-holding, this hand-holding process can start. With the first few states, you need it. Going forward, I guess states will become more proficient. And then lastly, undertake the process of ensuring a cohesive relationship between the wholesale and subnational markets. Whether we like it or not, DISCOs, even though they're regulated by states, will continue to buy power from the national grid. So it's very important that that engagement between the national grid operators and regulators, there's that collaboration at state level. Next slide. Next one. So the impact, sorry, can we go? The one before, please. So the impact of state electricity markets in the landscape, pretty straightforward. States having been empowered to develop and regulate their electricity sectors, we expect to see improvements in service delivery. We expect to see improvements in metering and the overall quality of service to enhance customer satisfaction and trust. As a matter of fact, some states have started their own mass metering processes. Ekiti, Edo, Ondo, they're in the forefront of pushing their own state state mass metering programs, and I know a couple of states have also reached out to say, okay, how do we go about making sure that our electricity consumers have meters? I know some states that have also gone ahead to start discussing with DISCOs to see how they can provide far more reliable electricity, particularly for the lower bands of customers. What kind of investment do you need to improve service to certain areas to improve power supply? So the expected outcome, we expect to see stronger local regulations. Think about it, the state governments are closest to the electricity consumer, right? So we expect that the regulations will be a lot tighter. We expect to see increased investment. A number of states have seen investors trooping to say, okay, what can we do? And we're not talking of investment in the hundreds of millions of dollars. As little as $50 million or a set of transformers or even managing a community, that's investment, right? So we're not talking of the huge, huge billions of dollars that people normally throw about when they talk about the power sector, right? And we expect to see enhanced competition. Oyo has a very interesting model, which I'm sure they'll talk about, but a number of states have pushed for competition. Lagos too has its own ideas how to push for competition, but long and short, we would say a competitive environment. Next slide, please. But there are potential issues which I think this meeting should address, and we all should collaborate to address them. The first issues are the possible regulatory inconsistencies between states and the federal government, which we think would create challenges in harmonizing practices, attracting investments, even at state level. We also think states might face hurdles in capacity building and administering their new regulatory functions effectively. Electricity regulation is not a straight walk in the park. In fact, it's not a walk in the park. It's a tough business. So we think from day one, you should start provisioning for how your regulators will build capacity. And then we have issues such as tariff discrepancies, planning coordination, and the complexity of interstate electricity transactions which may arise. And we expect to have further discussions to address this. Now, we've highlighted specific issues which I think we need to start to discuss. First is the federal government initiatives in the power sector as is today. First of all, you have things like FGM Power, that's the Siemens project. How will that, states that are now in full control of the market, how will that play out? We've got the mass metering initiatives, we have the NMMP, the PMI, the World Bank funded mass metering programs. How will this be situated in new markets? We have the rural electrification initiatives and then the World Bank funded programs in NESI, right? And then we have lingering market issues, tariff subsidies. That's a big issue that keeps cropping up. How do you address tariff issues, tariff subsidies? How do you settle existing market liabilities, right? Should the states even be responsible for it, or the states should just pretty much ignore it? Long and short, that's a conversation that needs to happen. You have gas supply issues. Whether you have state electricity markets or federal markets, I think we have a gas problem in this country, and we need to resolve it. States are closest to the gas producers, but gas producers are regulated by the federal government. So there's that interplay of how do the states derive value from the resources that they pretty much stand on. Edo State has one of the largest gas resources in the country. They also have the largest gas processing plant. I think Oben is there. It would shock you to know that Edo State, they have their own distribution company. That company buys gas at almost $7. Gas that is produced just about a kilometer from where the power plants are located. That can't work, right? So we need to see how states that are sitting on huge gas resources are able to channel or utilize their gas resources to power their economies. And then the other last part is the interconnection agreement. I still take it that the national grid will still be relevant in the new scheme of things. However, for us not to have stranded generation, it's important to have a very clear line of discussion as to how that interconnection between the wholesale market and the state market will operate. And when I mean the state electricity market, I'm not talking of the discos as we know them. The new discos that will be licensed, the new players that will play at state level that want to buy power from the national grid or sell power into the national grid, right? So that conversation really needs to happen so that we know that there is a seamless transition or transfer of electrons between the wholesale and state markets to benefit Nigeria. On that, so last slide, our key recommendations: we need more collaboration between NERC, states, Federal Ministry of Power, everybody that is responsible for power in this country. We need to start to have collaborative conversations. We recommend that NERC should have a transition desk to manage the transition process for states. So states have a resource within NERC they can approach. Ownership of discos and subcos, this is a big issue. It's been lingering. 11 years after privatization, nobody can say this is how much states, this is state equity in discos. Now you've moved into subcos, operating wholly within the state. I think it's very important that the issues of equity of states in discos, we put that to bed finally, considering that if you look at the state markets, 30% of infrastructure was provided by the state. So it's important to address that conversation. And then there's the need for tariff clarity. There's need, as Enugu, Ondo, Ekiti, they go into certain tariffs. There needs to be that clarity on the wholesale tariffs, how that will work, how they take the wholesale market tariffs, and then they're able to set up their own retail tariffs that work for all classes of customers. So, thank you very much. We'll dive straight to the panel sessions. And we have very eminent panelists. We have representatives of the DISCO, we have a representative from the GENCO, so we want to hear all sides, including the states as well. Okay, sure.
I'm sorry, this is supposed to be a closed session. Unfortunately, we have so many people that are not honorable commissioners here. And I need to pause and make this observation and have your concurrence for us to go on as we are here. Let it not be that this is not what we agreed. Mr. Chairman, am I communicating? We want a scenario where members will be able to speak freely to what he has presented, and the panelists can also speak freely. You think we are fine? Okay.
Okay, great. So Lagos, maybe we'll just go straight to you first. All right. So as one of Nigeria's Nigeria's largest urban center, not one of, as Nigeria's largest urban center. So what are your plans for the Lagos electricity market? I think it would be good to get a good sense as to what you're thinking for this Lagos state electricity market. By the way, please, so we can speeding up things, 3 minutes, right? So that we can, because I have a couple of questions. So let me start with Lagos. Please share with us your plans so we know how Lagos is thinking. Lagos, by the way, takes 60% or 50%, even though the commission likes to think they take 90% of the market.
Okay, I think there are things you cannot dispute. That we have 50% of the market is not open to any conversation, at least as of today. And I think somebody should give me a round of applause now. I mean, okay, but let me actually say that the applause actually does not belong to me. Larry, please, can you stand up for recognition properly? That's my predecessor in the office. Larry, stand up. But I don't try and be too humble. That's my predecessor in office. And we also have, where is the agent of this, my lawyer? Please, where is he? Epo, please now. Stand up for proper recognition. Please, I beg. I beg. Thank you. Okay, thank you. From the days of the RCM, at least we have been hanging around Epo and I've been working on models and modeling and all that. But we're where we are today, and I have the opportunity now of providing leadership for the Lagos team, and I can confirm the following. Firstly, is the fact that we are taking our time, and I'm happy that the chairman of our House committee is also here. We are taking our time to be sure that even if we are going to go wrong, let it be on record that we went wrong on the part of caution. So the first thing we started with is to do a complete de-risking study, and we brought in a couple of operators and say, based on the facts that are on ground, why is this situation like this? From the regulatory standpoint, to the economic standpoint, from the investors' view of the situation, to the financiers' the financiers' view of the situation, and then also from the discourse view of the situation. Based on all those de-risking work, we came up with a few things that needed to be in place in addition to the law. So while the law was going on, you know, my house is slightly different from a lot of other houses. Um, my house prides itself as the house above uncommon standards. Yes, yeah, that's it. So if I tell you that this number of sessions we had on this law, I may have been lying to you. Officially, unofficially, over dinner, over whatever, clause by clause, we negotiated a lot of things, and we came to a very strong landing. And you also know that within Lagos, within the Lagos market, you have all the big players, and you also have the two most viable distribution companies. So we needed to make sure that everybody is carried along. And you have a lot of consumer interest group also within our market. And you need to see one of our public hearing. I thought a typical public hearing, 100, 200 people, that would be it. But gallery, downstairs, we didn't do an head count, but we can't be less than 500 people at that session. So the first thing we did was to make sure that we scattered the ground properly. We carried everybody along. We had all the disagreements and agreements and all that. And we had a document that the House now also scattered further. And after all that, we are now, the law is signed. The law is in place, and we are ready to move forward. Now, while that was going on, Lagos has also finalized one of the studies my predecessor in office started is the generation, it's not generation, the study has to do with the number of, what do you call it? I better pass my neighbor and all the self-generation that there is no supply without, there should be no supply without meters. She'll have an additional 3 gig of capacity on it. And in that, we'll have 1 gig of solar and 2 gig of gas-fired plants. Now, the next thing we have to do to ensure that we have least costs and things have to be properly done is to introduce processes that will ensure that our procurements are transparent and so we are improving the process by which that becomes later.
Yeah. So let me pause you here, right? And we'll come back to you on that. But very interesting process. I'd like to jump straight to Oyo State because I know Oyo State. In fact, I've read their law, very progressive law, and I know they're doing stuff. So Oyo, I'm going to ask you same question, right? Please describe the Oyo State electricity market that you're currently putting in place.
Thank you very much, Odion. I'll just preface what I'm going to say by saying that in Oyo, we asked ourselves a couple of questions. Do we want to disrupt the market? On the one hand, you can say yes, because we advocate for a lot of change and a lot of innovation. But on the other hand, you don't want to destroy what is working at the moment, irrespective of how badly you may feel it is working or how much better you believe it could be. There's something in place at this moment in time. The way we looked at our market, initially we took audits of all the infrastructure that we have in place in the state and also our consumption, what we believed was our consumption. And then we did a couple of big things first. We signed an agreement with Shell to extend their gas pipeline infrastructure into the state, which we believe puts us at an advantage in terms of being able to generate electricity in Oyo State. We also did solar radiation studies in the northern part of the state, which we also believe gives us a comparative advantage compared to other parts of the country in terms of what we believe we can generate on the solar side. We've clustered Oyo State. Oyo State is, I think it's the 11th largest state in the country in terms of landmass, 28,500 kilometers squared. And when we looked at the infrastructure, we saw that the bulk of it was concentrated in a certain part of the state because of the economics of it. And we wanted to see how we could best penetrate other parts of the state. Something that we found very interesting, and I think this is something that many of my colleagues here should actually take stock of. When we came to power in 2019, we didn't have a single mini-grid in Oyo State, but today we have 27 mini-grids. And these are in rural communities that erstwhile did not have electricity before now. And it has a direct impact on upwards of 10,000 residents in the state. But importantly, the tariffs that are paid in these rural parts of the state far exceed what many of us in the commercial sectors were paying pre the removal of this Band A subsidy. So what that showed us clearly from the data was that in Nigeria, if the service is rendered and you do have 24 hours uninterrupted electricity, people will be able and will be willing to pay the tariff for that service. And I think that is a very big take-home that drove a lot of what we're doing in Oyo State. Directly flowing from that is the fact, so yeah, we looked at it and we saw that, yeah, people are willing to pay if you can guarantee 24 hours electricity. And it goes to something that Dafe mentioned earlier and also what Odion has said, being ready to take and being prepared to take what may be considered as tough decisions, but these are tough decisions that need the market to work. The simple fact of the reality is that the tariff aggregated at the end of the day must be able to clear all the costs associated with the generation, transmission, and distribution of the electricity. Every single kobo must be recovered, in the absence of which you have to be prepared to put your hands in your pocket and subsidize. And you need to run those numbers properly. One thing that we've also done is leverage on the expertise of those in the sector, NERC, REA, and all the others. We've continued to engage and will continue to re-engage. Now, today, what we're doing is we're issuing temporary licenses or provisional licenses to those who wish to invest in Oyo State, preparatory to when the transition process with NERC is completed. We believe that that will allow us to hit the ground running, and we won't have to start scampering around to do what we want to do when we can actually start today. I mentioned that we have clusters in the state. In each cluster, this was driven principally by what we believe are bankable off-takers. We know that you want investment, it all comes back down to you go and sit down with your bankers and the financiers, and it all boils down back to how are you going to recover these costs so that you can service the finance. What we did is, in our clustering, we looked at what we believed was our comparative advantages. So in areas where, for instance, the government has a huge presence, the government secretariat, or we had some huge investment in a part of the state, we're ready as an anchor off-taker to off-take that electricity, which will therefore service the community. We've also made a big push in terms of agriculture and the value addition in agriculture. So there's a lot of heavy lifting and heavy equipment in the agriculture sector and in the mining sector in Oyo State, and we've taken those to be anchor off-takers to induce the investment in the state. And something rather interesting that we're also doing is will allow you to come, take your provisional license. If you want 5 megawatts, you can have 5 megawatts. But a certain percentage of that must actually go to the host community around there, because we understand that when you're speaking with your financiers, they want that anchor customer, which is where they're going to actually bank the project. That's fine, but the host community must have a certain percentage of what is generated from a particular plant. This is primarily on the embedded scheme that I'm speaking to in terms of how we're running our markets in the state. And something just off the cuff for my colleagues, I've had many people come to me and say to me they want to do 500 megawatts, they want to do 100 megawatts, and they come with all these fantastic things. We're being very modular in our state. We get, I think it oscillates between 70 and 85 megawatts in Oyo State today, according to the data that we have. The first IPP we signed was for 11 megawatts, which is about 15 to 20% of what the state gets already. So that's a 15% increment on what is available at the moment. So it's fantastic to think in the hundreds of megawatts, but we also need to be realistic in terms of taking the progressive and pragmatic steps towards getting to where we know we want to be, and taking one step after the other, and hopefully we'll get there. And just lastly, sorry, an important thing for us to avert our minds to, I believe. Odion mentioned it, and I think it's, I'm not sure if it's going to come up later on in the conversation, but this is, what is the equity that the states have in the respective discos in the federation? I know that a number of us would be happy if we know what that equity is in the disco, to capitalize it and put the state's balance sheet behind bettering that infrastructure. But until we have those numbers, I can also say for certain that some states will not take those steps until we're very sure of exactly what we're going to get out of it at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thank you. So, sorry, can you hear me? All right. So, Commissioner Akwa Ibom State, same question, but I know you don't have a law yet, but you have a power plant. I think it's over 500 megawatts. We heard in the news you just created the Akwa Ibom Electricity Distribution Company. That was what we read in the news, so you can maybe provide clarity. But I also know Akwa Ibom sits on a huge gas resource, and we would like to know, in terms of how you're cooking your state electricity market, how you want to tie all of this to deliver better power to the citizens of Akwa Ibom.
All right. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen. Akwa Ibom. I'll first start with a general comment. Yes, there's a big enthusiasm about states coming on train or going on the train vis-a-vis legislation, the law, and being subnational entities. But having said that, we clearly know that there's a whole lot of work to be done. As a state, are we scared? Rather than being scared, we are emboldened and actually trying to take very major steps. Very major steps because of a couple of reasons. At the end, I'm going to say, what have we done as a state? But I'd like to just highlight this, for the benefit of my colleagues and everybody. Be no doubt that the sub-national control of the electricity markets means a delineation of the national grid. And that in itself means a creation of interface points along the grid. Every interface point, like we know, is an inefficiency point. So states must be intentional and clear that there must be clear understanding, clear commitment, a clear intentionality of purpose that we're going to work these interface points. Why the need to work these interface points? Because like we know, electricity is a utility, and because it's a utility, and I've kept hammering on this point, because it's a utility, it exactly needs the numbers to break even. I'll talk about the issue of tariffing and the budget and the capex and all that. Why have I said this? Because people are going to come with the mega money. I think somebody did make it, and it's general no, industry standard. For each megawatt of electricity installed, you need an investment of about $1.2 to $1.8 million per megawatt. That's the quoted number. And again, the investors themselves are not Santa Clauses, they're not Father Christmas. So there must be a guaranteed way of this money getting back to them called return on investment. And so what does this entail? This means states, without a doubt, must be very prepared to collaborate with themselves. Regional gridding, trans-subnational collaboration, tariffing and all that. I thank what the NGF has done by giving us a template that tries to make uniform, consistent legislation across the state, so that as an investor is working in state A, Akwa Ibom, it also knows that if he moves, if it enlarges his goes to Abia, Imo, Anambra, whatever, proximal states, it's not going to get shocks. There's some element of that business continuity in transactioning across or in the other state. And exactly like my Enugu brother said, we need to talk amongst ourselves, the South-South and the Southeast. Why? Because proximality will help us do it better, will help us see the road faster and all that and all that. I'll now backtrack a bit. And then one other important point, before I say what we've done as a state, one other important point. States presently run a budget that doesn't substantially include electricity. And so they're going to have the shocks of putting electricity, because again, our budgets annually in the states are done on the basis of historical. What was there last year? You put a number, 10, 15% incremental, take off inflation and all that. There's going to be a shock to the states to having to put numbers to handle electricity solo. This is going to hit the states as a shock. And is there budgetary proviso? Yes, there would be, but there may not be enough to handle this. And so what does it mean? It means we need investors that will come and help us support. Now, what have we done as a state? I think to the glory of God, Akwa Ibom State is one of the factor in that state because some things are already in ground. And Odion has mentioned already, let out the card out of the bank. We are actually one state. I mean, because we're a huge gas producer, we got companies, oil and gas companies operating the state. So we have an existing gas pipeline infrastructure, that can be tapped and all that. But again, back to your point, you said, yes, we do have we have a generating company. And the state government was quite intentional that 10, 40 years ago, 15 years ago, it made the clear, very uncommon decision to invest in power generation. We have an installed 191 megawatt facility, but the production now is actually about 60, 70 consistent. There are lots of risk involved. I mean, if we write the risk register, it's long. But one of the things we highlighted with the subnational movement to self-generation and control was the issue of gas security. I mean, those days of Harley Chase, we used to say every system should have a backup system. We don't have a backup system, and we know what that means. I don't want to bore us with the historical log of what has happened and happened. But again, we've started de-risking that. Use the word de-risking, Uncle. Yes, we have approval to do 685. Why do we have this? Because there's that sitting facility that only needs to be scaled up. There's also that clear capacity of knowledge. We've run a 191 megawatt facility, and therefore running a 685 wouldn't be. As a state, our aspiration is to be a net exporter of power. Why? Because we know, and some states don't realize this, if you're not naturally factoring down, it's going to be a problem to be self-sufficient to the extent of self-generation and all. And therefore, you need others. But what's the limitation in that? The limitation in that is that in needing others, in trying to be a net exporter of power, there has to be a sitting available evacuation route. We presently have the Abaitu line. I mean, that line is about 40, 51 years old. But in terms of materials that were used, in terms of the socioeconomics of now, vis-a-vis when that decision to install that line was made, we're not yet there. The line is old. The cable sizing is wrong and are under. And what is that investment? Who is making that investment? This is something that's been in the books for the past 5 years, TC and all that. And we've made some kind of approach. Can we block? Can we handle this change out? And then over a span of 5 years and all that, we could amortize the repayment stuff. Again, like we all know, I mean, we're all Nigerians, so there's no doubt in the fact. The bureaucracy issues and all that, and the agreement and dotting the lines was going to be the mechanism and all that. How are you going to get back this money? And everybody every day says, no, this is our court. That's not going to work, because once we say this is our court, gentlemen and ladies, we don't want to say this, but the truth of the matter is that we are in for a potential grid shutdown, because if a state as I landed itself, and somewhere down the line, 3, 4 years down the line, 2, 3 years, 4 years down the line, facility maintenance, asset maintenance, everything put together, you find that you are blanked out. If you don't have that connectivity with your proximal state, gentlemen, we're going to have a big ball of darkness all over Nigeria. So we're going to have a problem bigger than we ever imagined. Now, talking about where we are on the state law, I would just say this. We've had some discussions with the House. We've had a public hearing on a version of the law. We've done an harmonized version of the law. I think in about 2 weeks, we're ready to go down. We've even engaged some external consultants. But you know how it is. You want to be very clear. You want to be very sure. And by the way, our law has a clause that says 3 months after you connected and you've made an application for a meter, if you don't have a meter, estimated billing is no longer going to be on the table. That way, we've put that condition precedent upfront to everybody, that if you don't have a meter, then be sure that 3 months after you wired your house and we'll give you interim provisional light, we will clearly cut out that light as a matter of, supported by the law. I'll now take step by step, where are we on each of the activities. I've talked about the generation capacity itself, the grid. As a state, internally, we do have a semi-ring architecture, power architecture. Again, that's an infrastructure. So to make it, and what was the intent? The intent is to have a ringed 132 transmission line architecture in the state, so that from there we can radiate. And again, let me just highlight, that as a state, before even the introduction of EE and all that, and our growth towards subnational control, we had actually asked for a distribution license and got a distribution license with a clearly marked schedule of communities, villages that are off-grid. So as a state, we already have those numbers, we already have those listings. But that knowledge is not yet complete because we're in the process of doing an energy mapping, an energy survey. What do these states need? Why do we need that? Because so oftentimes we find that power investments, power assets are made and decided on the basis of political decisions rather than economic criteria, rather than criteria that would allow a synergistic, leveraged, collaborated approach, so that once you have here, you can do this. Without calling them, but the reality is, at some point in time, 5, 6 years ago, we did have a couple of NIPP facilities. Great job, sub-injection stations, all done. But you know what? 5 years down the line, none of those injection substations has been hooked up. So again, investments have been made, but what is the output? What's the benefit? What's the deliverable to the people? Those things are not there. So that's one of the things we're doing. Next one thereabout, when we have an approval to run actually a survey of the entire state architecture, so that we can have a sitting resource knowledge base. I will make a decision on the basis of those knowledge base. We make our decisions on the basis so that we don't have a facility. The other day, we just say, look, we have a big 1.2 megawatt transformer installed somewhere. Why would you install a 1.2 megawatt transformer in a place that the power, the load audit is just about 250 kV? So those are the kind of things we're trying to avoid. As a state, no, at this point in time, and I would like to put that as a first step, stopping parting short, there are no propositions or pitchings that are off limits to us in Akwa Ibom State. Presently, we are kidding, we are jostling with the concessioning idea. Why are we jostling with that concessioning idea? Because of the existing power architecture in Akwa Ibom, 60-65%, and you know this, NEC knows this, it's published documentation, published records, about 60-65% of the investment is done by the state. So I think with the mandatory posturing of NEC post when we do the law and all that, PHED would have published documents at least to 218, 219, that this is the investment we have done. Even on the meter side, like I've talked about our law, our proposed law and all that, on the meter side, knowing that investors, that a utility company must have a platform to get back its investment. You can have an AT&C of over 45%. I'm not talking about a discos down, but that's the reality amongst all the discos in Nigeria. You have an AT&C of about 40-45%. No business survives in that scenario. So as a state, we did make that intentional investment bid by co-partnering with Income Electric, and we actually had a CKD meter assembly plan. Well, has it done optimally? No. Why? Because of the effects and the normal maintenance issues of Nigeria, the normal off-taking and payment issues in Nigeria. Do we intend to revamp it? Clearly, yes. Because if you have a law that says no meter, no power, then you must have a facility that enables you to push meters to the market. I think I'd like to stop there for now. And then
thank you so much, Honorable Commissioner Akwa Ibom. So let's take the last Honorable Commissioner on the panel, Honorable Commissioner Jigawa. Jigawa, where's Jigawa on its law? But more importantly, right, we have investors in this room. We would like to know what are Jigawa's strategies rather, to create a viable electricity market for its citizens, and what you think investors should be looking forward in your laws, your regulations that will bring them to Jigawa. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Odion. Let me start by making it official here, because during your presentation, I learned that when you presented your envelopes, there were Jigawa is not in the list. But let me say this, actually, for more than 3 weeks ago, our law has been passed by the National Assembly. It was not made public because that same week, we had an incident of fire outbreak, which I know every one of us is aware. So that what took the ground. So we cannot be able to talk on anything in relation to that. So as I'm talking now, Jigawa already has its own law passed. Regarding what we are doing in Jigawa, I can say that it's good for us to know that the entire ministry, the Ministry of Power in Jigawa, is at an infant stage. It's new, because we were not more than 3 months old. Despite the fact that earlier than that we have started uh, intentionally we have started so many, we have made so many attempts for over a year since the beginning of, since the enactment of the Electricity Act 2023. But let me be specific. You know, what we do, we look at the entire, we look back to the generation, to the entire history of the Nigerian electricity supply industry since from the 1950s, the coming of the ECN, the Niger Dams Authority in 1950s, up to the investment done in 1960s and 90s, until the rebundling of the electricity sector in 2013, where the gen costs come in and the discourse as well were privatized. When we look at those happenings until the recent Electricity Act 2023, we realize that the challenges are still existing and also are similar in nature when it comes to the generation and also the distribution. Then we start thinking of, okay, as a state, what do we think, where do we think we can come in and maybe leverage on so that we can be able to make an impact, especially how we can improve the market in our state. Another thing we consider is also the franchised area. Because like Jigawa, we are bordered with Bauchi, which has been serviced by different disco. We are bordered with Yobe. We are bordered with Kano and Katsina. But thank God, Kano and Katsina are within the same disco operating. But this challenges has to also be looked into, most especially regarding the regulations, because your law has to look at all these interstate transactions, so that, like what my colleague has just said, the Honorable Commissioner Akwa Ibom and also Oyo, if you have a law that is more, you put laws that are more strong compared to your neighbors, that will be a challenge to you. But one thing that I want us to know here is that we intentionally and deliberately, made a giant move, especially with the current happening. We all know what has happened recently in October and December, especially to all the northern states, the total blackout, which definitely even affects the billing, the recovery, the collection of even the discourse. I know I just got an information that maybe in this September, our discourse can only be able to recoup not more than 20% of their of their used gigawatt hours that they sell. So all these things, you have to take them into consideration and know the challenges, because you have to know yourself first before you can be able to take a next step. Now, the bold step that we have taken, I heard the Honorable Commissioner Akwa Ibom talking about maybe the deliberate attempt by the state, especially regarding the budget. Thank God, in my state, though as a norm, you will be given an envelope. An envelope was given to the new ministry based on the envelope, because we know what we want and we know where we are heading to. So we use the envelope appropriately. But when it comes to the high level discussion, we were lucky that our envelope has to be doubled more than 10 times, because we were able to clearly state these are our challenges and these are where we are heading to. And this is what we wanted to achieve. Based on that, our envelope was doubled more than 10 times. I cannot precisely say the amount, but I know it's more than 10 times. This goes to tell you that Jigawa is making a deliberate attempt, an intentional attempt to see that both the generation aspect and also the distribution aspect of the electricity market, because they are the major ones that the subnationals can better come into. So I think I can stop here.
Yeah.
Maybe if there is a second round, there are some other things that I may add.
Thank you.
Thank
but
you.
Just a quick one, right? You've passed your law, or the House has passed the law.
Yes.
Has the law been signed by the governor?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. what stopped the signing is because
Okay.
it was passed on Monday.
Okay.
Then this fire incident comes on. So before then, everything has changed direction.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. A round of applause again for the Honorable Commissioner. So we have the Gencos and the Discos here to speak. Unfortunately, we have 10 minutes more for this panel so that the next panel can come in, right? So I'm not sure who to start with first. Maybe let's ladies first. So we'll start with the Gencos. And Joy, I'm going to be Dr. Gaji, I'm going to be very specific, right? Two things. Grid issues. You guys are national grid generators. We had grid instability. How do you think state electricity markets would help your association members and also help in stabilizing the grid? There's also something I need you to respond to, which the Honorable Commissioner Akwaibom said. A risk to your business where states are considering islanding their operations, right, or their markets. How would that affect you? How do you think states need to work with on-grid generators so we have seamless interconnects?
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank the organizers for inviting the Association of Power Generation Companies that represents all power generation companies in Nigeria. Thank you for those two questions. And Honorable Commissioner, glad to meet you. Yes. Akwa Ibom or Ibom Power is a member of the association. So the islanding of Akwa Ibom, in fact, the last time the grid collapsed, everywhere was in darkness, but Akwa Ibom was still generating. So that's a good plus for them. In fact, as a matter of fact, it's an innovation for us to start looking at. How can we island the ever collapsing grid in segments for sustainability of power? I'm not an engineer by profession, I'm a lawyer by profession, but I've become a legal engineer. So I would say that I think it calls for more innovation even among the states. I was speaking with one of my brothers just before the meeting started, and we both agreed that we should look at the positives. There are many negatives, but then we can look at the positives. So looking at the positive from the islanding of Akwa Ibom, other states, and if the transmission is represented here, or experts who are in transmission, who are system engineers, can start looking at how state electricity markets in creating the regional grid can island in some cases. But now the expanse to which that islanding can feed is what we need to also look at. Is it going to feed only that state, or are there some interconnected states that can feed through that islanding? So to us as generators, it's not a threat to us. They are members of the association. Now now, having said that, answering your question, how does state electricity market affect the GENCOs who are largely on the national grid? Is a very good question, and it's a question that we have been pondering on, because not only the states moving out, you know, by virtue of the Electricity Act 2023, NEC has issued, not NEC, the law, the Electricity Act has mandated distribution companies to start coming up with mini grids. Now, this also is a threat to the power on the grid. Take into cognizance the fact that from 2013 till date, over 11 years post privatization, power that is made available has not been fully utilized. The utilization figure has been around 50, maximum 53%, when compared with availability. So, and with now these new laws coming, states are going off, discos are mandated compulsorily to set up mini grids. Then what happens to the investors who have invested large money? We have heard how much a megawatt cost, not just bringing it on board. Maintaining that megawatt is another cost that has not been taken into cognizance. This is just bringing a megawatt on board. So there are so many questions in the mind of the GENCOs, but we believe that both NEC at the federal level and the SEX at the state level understand this impact on the investors. I know I heard the Lagos State Commissioner mentioned he had, because we were all surprised why Lagos that started everything just went quiet, but now I've heard how much work they've been doing underground. I've also heard other commissioners, Oyo, Akwa Ibom, and Jigawa, every commissioner, no one has said they just jumped into it. And this was what we were advising, that please, it is not a walk in the park. Don't just jump, look before you leap. And I want to thank and congratulate them all and others that are yet to speak, that they are actually not jumping, they are looking very well before they leap. It now reminds me of what I read in The Gods Are Not to Be Blamed, where Baba Fankule advised King Odewale. He said, he told King Odewale, King of Kutuje, go sit down in private and think deep before darkness covers you up. I'm glad that our commissioners are thinking deep and darkness will not cover Nigeria.
Thank you so much. So the last panelist, and he represents the discos. Chief Sunday Odutan. So I'm going to be very straightforward. Chief Sunday, how do you see this emergence of state electricity markets, and how does it affect your members? Your members, 11 successor discos. Very clearly, some states have said, look, we're going to license more parties, more distribution companies. Some states have said, do you know what? We're going to remodel, we're going to change the business model. We're going to say, look, it's either you're doing the wires only or you're selling electrons, right? So what you can't do too. Some states are looking at other means of improving supply. How does this all read to you? First of all, as a Nigerian, then wearing your association hat, how does this affect you and your advice to this?
Thank you very much. Well,
so sorry, we'll soon round up, so I'll...
Yeah, thank you. As the MDCO of ANED, which is the Discos Association, so I have the authority of all the Discos investors and the operators to say everything I'm going to say here. Number one, I want to congratulate all the states. The Electricity Act of 2023 as amended is the best thing that has happened to Nigeria because it's a game changer. So I want to assure all the states that for us at Discos, we are wiser today than we were 10 years ago. We are more realistic today than we were last year. We know this is a journey, and the only way we can not be left behind is to be with you on that journey. And what we need in the sector is cooperation, collaboration, and alignment. And so far, I'm very impressed by what I heard from the honorable commissioners here. Lagos State, Oyo State, Akwa Ibom, and Jigawa. And when people talk about this state electricity market, Nigeria started from that point. In 1896, where we are today, they had electricity. It was generated here in Eko. It was only for here. In fact, they started by using it for street lights. And my own town was an independent nation in this, before this country called Nigeria. From 1898 to December, after amalgamation, we joined Nigeria in December 1914. That's Abeokuta, the state capital of Ogun State, commonly known as Egbaland. 1912, in fact, in 1904, we took a loan of £500,000 as a country ourselves from the British government. We built a water works. And then the British came back and said, you can be pumping this water by using electricity. That was how we started building our electricity in Abeokuta. By 1912, electricity in Abeokuta was not just for street lights, but also for homes. And our experience and history has shown us that electricity in an enclosure, like in a state level, can even be more efficient than when you have a nation-based thing. Because you can do a lot of things. We know it will facilitate competition, more efficiency, it will encourage more investment, it will bring in more investors. But my only, my word to the state, the way Nigerian nation is structured, and you said we can speak freely, the way Nigerian nation is structured today, the governors of Nigeria are damn too powerful. And in some cases, they're damn very autocratic. When you have state electricity market, you must ensure that the regulator at the state level are totally independent. They must be, you must bring in people, ensure you have round pegs in round holes. What is going on with the Nigerian power sector today has to do with the fact that if you assemble everybody, all of us in the sector today, you cannot guarantee that all of us are round peg in round holes. You have a couple of round pegs in round holes. That is there, that's one of the round pegs in round holes. People that know their job, they do the right thing, they put the country first. Some people, they will speak publicly, you think, excuse me, this person shouldn't have a job after midnight, but they will still be there. So ensure at the state level you don't have that kind of scenario. What you need to have is people that know what they are doing. And I'm very impressed by what I heard from Lagos, from Akwa Ibom, particularly from Oyo. The best housing estate that you can do in Nigeria is when you get the land, don't sell yet, go to the bare land, clear the land, create the road, the street, put street light, put points from where people can get their light, provide water. In Abeokuta, we have an estate called Olusegun Oshoba Presidential Estate. That was a place where Baba Obasanjo built his house and a couple of few Nigerian elites, including the founder of GTB. Before they sold the land at all, everything was there. That's what I heard from Lagos, from Akwa Ibom, and of course from Oyo, which is that electricity metering is very important. When people are metered, they can measure their consumption. You can also ring-fence your network. You can monitor things. So from all of this, I can assure you, because I heard earlier on when they said some discos are still reluctant, I think that may be yesterday. As of today, I can assure you, we are ready to work with you. We are ready to compete with other players. And with you at the state level, what we've been clamoring for, which is having a cost-reflective tariff. The last time, the Lagos Commissioner was at the forum last time, he made it very clear, said, Lagos is not going to pay subsidy, which means everybody is realistic as to the appropriate pricing of the product. Thank you very much.
A round of applause for this very esteemed panel session. Unfortunately, time is not our friend. We started late, and this is the consequence of starting late, where we are unable to take questions or drill because we have two more panels, and we have the Honorable from Lagos State who's patiently waiting for his panel as well. Very interesting panel, but let me please thank the Commissioner of Lagos State, Chief Sunday Oduton, Commissioner Oyo State, Commissioner Akwa Ibom State, Commissioner Jigawa, and our own Dr. Joe Agaji for a very great panel discussions. Thank you so much. Can we have pictures, please? Group photographs, please.
Thank you very much. Can we please applaud all our panelists and,
Please,
of course, the moderator as they take a group photograph? Thank you very much. You would agree with me, it's been quite insightful getting feedbacks from the various states. Thank you very much. Please, can we applaud them better? Thank you very much for your time. And we will be moving straight to the next panel discussion as we look to the topic, the Electricity Act 2023, the role of the National Assembly in addressing potential conflict between the EA 2023 and the state electricity laws to mitigate legal challenges to state electricity market. And to join us for this panel conversation, I'd like to invite the Chairman House Committee on Energy and Mineral Resources, Lagos State House of Assembly. Join me as I welcome Honorable Oluwasegun Akombi. Can we please applaud him as he comes up? He will also be joined by the Honorable Commissioner Ekiti State. The Honorable Commissioner Ekiti State. Do we have the Honorable Commissioner Ekiti State here? Please let's applaud him. Thank you. The Honorable Commissioner Taraba State. Thank you very much. This time we have a woman, so there's a gender balance. Thank you. All right, we'll be having also to join this panel. We'd like to invite the representative of the chairman NEC. I'd like to invite Mr. Daffy to please join the panel. Thank you very much, sir. And of course, we'll be inviting the Chairman House Committee on Power. I'm talking of Honorable Victor Oyumechi Wokolo. Is he here, please? Okay, let me invite the moderator for this session. I'd like to invite the moderator for this session is the partner with Udo Udoma Belu Osage. Join me as I welcome Mr. Nicholas Okafo. Can we please applaud him as he comes up? This panel will run for the next 40 minutes, and thereafter we will be going for lunch and reconverge for the next session. Please let's applaud our moderator and our panelists as they take us through the next session.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, panelists, honorable commissioners, and our regulator. Time is fast spent, and I know people want to go and have their lunch, so we'll dive straight into the conversation. And in the trend of the way the conversation has been flowing, even though we are now looking at basically the legal framework for making sure that we have more convergence and results instead of conflicts and disagreements, as we focus in trying to implement, in one hand, the Electricity Act of 2023, and in another bucket, the various state electricity laws. We want to make sure that through this conversation, we bring out the nuggets that will help to make sure that we have more of convergence and consensus that will bring out results. And I will shoot straight by inviting the Honorable Commissioner for Lagos State to sort of tell us, Ekiti State, because they're one of those that have taken the bull by the horn. As you have seen, their names have been mentioned several times by not just passing the law, but they are one of those that NEC has actually given the mandate to begin the implementation of the law. Honorable Commissioner, Ekiti State.
Yes, thank you, moderator and my colleagues who are here. It's always a pleasure to see my other colleagues who are really competent about what they're about, this important role that we find ourselves in. As has been stated, we in Ekiti State have taken bold steps in terms of this. We have made very early decisions not to be frightened about the prospects of taking charge of our lives, primarily because we believe that we have been underserved all these years, either in terms of metering, in terms of existence of electricity lines. So we were extremely happy about the fact that the amendment and the law and decided to go ahead with forming our own law. Quite frankly, we early on decided that we will have as few conflicts as possible with existing law. As few conflicts as possible. So the existence, NERC, NEMSA, all the agencies that already existed, we had decided very early on to mirror them within the state. Not to copy them, but to adapt them within the state. Quite frankly, before the laws themselves, we had a very strong Ministry of Infrastructure and Public Utilities. I've been Commissioner for Infrastructure and Public Utilities. This is my 4th year. So 2 years before the Electricity Act, I've been involved. I was Director General of the Office of Strategy, Transformation and Strategy and Delivery, even before I became chair. So we had been addressing electricity issues even before the act came on. So I would say that we've been addressing this very early on. So when the law came, we were really ready to take some bold actions. We had an electricity board before the law, which was taking charge of state assets. We had the Ministry of Infrastructure and Public Utilities, which was supervising. But we then set up the Electricity Regulatory Board, which we used to mirror NERC. And we then also had an electricity management division within our board, which mirrors NEMSA. We all know how we feel about NEMSA, right? So, but we made sure that we had a division within the board. And we've actually been talking quite a lot with the NERC. I send mail back and forth between myself and Musiliu, sometimes even with him. I send emails back and forth. We also had the Electricity Regulatory Board. Luckily for us, quite a number who were already working in the board itself. We just moved them over to the regulatory board. So they had a good background about the need for regulation within the state. The other issue that is important for us to understand is that laws are made for man and not man for the law, right? You must always be ready to adapt. The other issue we also indicated was that our regulatory board is actually quite independent of the governor. Most of the orders, we've had 3 orders. An order about meters, it's a regulation, no meter, no electricity. We have an order about tariff, which we are also going to have some discussions about. We have indicated that we will not address tariff issues in the state until every single state in the country has its own law. Because if there are going to be subsidies for the states, then we in Ekiti State will also enjoy that subsidy. So that way, so we have an order that says until further notice, Ekiti's consumers will be under MITO. So that we don't, so when Mr. Akweneye says that we are going to fully determine our tariffs, we are not doing that yet. Okay. We have it as, we have that as part of our law. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Because, I mean, those are actually the areas that if there's going to be conflict, so he's using a proactive regulatory step to make sure that he reduces the areas of conflict. Now, I'll go straight to Taraba State. I know that the Honorable Commissioner from Taraba has very strong background in the private sector. Worked across her myself, in one of the clients I was advising. Now, what I want to understand is that in Taraba State, I know you understand investment, you also understand how to make sure that the right kind of investors come into the state. Looking at your framework in Taraba State, how are you looking at making sure that between the Electricity Act 2023 and either the law you are going to pass or the one you have passed, that in terms of implementation, there is very little conflict, but more consensus with the sector stakeholders in order to deliver results to the people of Taraba State.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nicholas. And it's also good to see you here again. And
Pleasure.
good afternoon, everyone. So in Taraba State, where we are right now, we've passed our electricity law for the state. But as compared to my colleagues from other states, and what we did when we came on board was we were very deliberate. We needed to understand our challenges. We needed to understand our strengths. And I think that is what the advantage of the Electricity Act 2023 provides for state, because one shoe doesn't fit all at the same time. So for us, we realized one of our key strengths was hydro resources. And gas is just a very far-fetched area for us. So our law in particular, one of the things that we also tried to do was to strengthen the regulatory commission. And in doing that, what we did was we created a board. But the board doesn't determine the regulation. The board takes care of a number of the political arm. So delineating that aspect, because listen, we may try to, be blind about some political rigmaroles that comes in, but it's very realistic at the state level. And you must ensure that you protect the regulators from that aspect of politics so that there is clear independence and it gives investors confidence in the sector. So that's one aspect that our framework was able to achieve. Then secondly, we also recognized a number of the integration with the national level, with the national electricity market. So at that point, what we did was we looked at ourselves and said, Electricity EA 2023 says within your jurisdiction. So how do you maximize within your jurisdiction? And whatever is going out of your jurisdiction, we cap it as commercial matters. We're not capping. Technically, as an engineer, there's just so much you can do technically if you want to, isolate yourself from the national market and everything. So technically, it still interfaces. But commercially, you have to deal with that. You have to deal with the federal regulators when it comes to those commercial issues. And we do have resources that have very large capacity. So we understood that. And we didn't want to cripple, any prospective investor providing for the state and also an opportunity to provide outside the state. So we understood that. Then for the subsidy that my colleague has alluded to, we will still participate in that as long as what is due to every state, states that have transitioned, states that haven't transitioned, we will still participate in that. But at the same time, there are different customer bases in the state. There are areas that cost-reflective tariff has to come into play. The state is so large. Our land mass is about 54,000 kilometers square. You don't expect us to run transmission line all over that huge land mass. So there are off-grid communities that have their resources and they will pay cost-reflective tariff. But there's still a shaking of hands between, even when the DISCO would implement their subsidiary, there's still that handshake with the federal. So a number of that commercial matters will still also have to be dealt with. And I think that is where the National Assembly will come into play, because those things, and I think that's the right platform, because the National Assembly is representative of the entire country. So as a country, let's sit down and determine how do we move from point A to point B. But on the basis of the EA 2023, the delineation of the functions of the state and the delineation of the functions of the federal, that is very clear in our law.
Thank you very much, Naomi. That's very wonderful. And I'm particularly impressed that Taraba State has sort of proactively looked into the issue of off-grid communities and how to address them. And then you spoke about the issue of point of sales and coordination, which we'll come back to later. But before I come to Dafe, the commissioner that is started with making sure that this law has life, let me go to Lagos State. The chairman of the House Committee on Power. The truth about it is that whatever happens here in Lagos has a cascading effect on the rest of the country, basically because Lagos is like the 6th biggest market in Africa by balance sheet. So has balance sheet that is bigger than many African countries. Now, Lagos State, we've been discussing what you're doing and what you haven't done yet, and you are the chairman of the committee that will make sure that this newly minted law, reflected what the state is trying to achieve. Can you just talk us through some of the things that are happening both at the House and at policy level within Lagos State in terms of making sure, on the theme of our conversation, that between the Electricity Act of 2023 and the Lagos State electricity law, there is very little conflict, but we achieve more of consensus?
Good afternoon, all, and welcome to Lagos State. Firstly, I want to say that the commissioner mentioned that we took our time in passing that law. It is because we had to look into the different consideration, Firstly, we had to look at all the laws in existence when it comes to electricity in drafting our own law. The commissioner and we tried so much to drive that process of making sure that we have a very good law that will not need to be amended every now and then. The reason why I personally said that we don't want us to amend our law when passed is because I believe that if we want the market to be private sector driven, if we keep going back to amend our law every now and then, our investors will lose confidence in us. Hence, we took our time, and I'm happy that the commissioner just notified me today that the law has been passed and has been signed by His Excellency the Governor. That's to show that our work for over 7, 8 months paid off. All the existing laws, all the things we need to put into consideration, we looked at it. However, we know that laws are instruments that can be tested. And we had to look at every lacuna that may exist in the law and address it. Laws are very flexible. We can still go back to the drawing board if we see that there's anything we need to do right. However, I know, and I want to put it to you all commissioners, that the future of this country is right in your hands right now, because there's no economy that thrives without adequate energy, and the federal government have passed that regulatory power down to the state. We are only going to, be there to create the framework, but in terms of implementation and execution, that is the most critical part of all of this. And the legislature and the executive that you represent, we must work in synergy. You must explain to us things we don't understand. Some of us have never worked in this industry before. But you need to understand that we got elected into those positions or these positions by the people. And in situations where you bring some of the things you want us to do, explain to us in details. Even if we have to keep going back and forth on some of these things, it is your responsibility to make us understand that if we do it this way, it may affect these things. Our own considerations sometimes may be very political, and I will say that There is nothing we can do about that. I'll give you a very short scenario. I almost lost the last election in my constituency because just a few weeks to the election, there was tariff adjustment in my area. And the people were not having it. Sometimes you need to explain to the people, and we represent the people. The first point of call sometimes, often, all the time, is we are the first point of call before we come to you. And they will need an explanation on why certain things are happening. I have been chairman of this committee for about 2 years now. And I know that to put up this infrastructure everywhere and to make energy sufficient costs a lot of money. And all the investors want to recoup their money. But in doing that, we need to also put the people into consideration.
Okay. The Honorable Chairman is bringing to the fore the point that Naomi, the Honorable Commissioner from Taraba State, dealt with in her presentation, which is, where does politics stop? And then business and economics start. And how do you balance the two to make sure that the state, the people, don't lose out in terms of trying to make sure that investments come into the state? And the next set of points that we sort of marry all that, there's no better person to address them than the person that has been at the driving seat to make sure that this law that was just a mere piece of paper, was a mere piece of paper in 2023, but now is assuming a life of its own across the country. So I want to bring up to the microphone Dafe Akbene, the Honorable Commissioner in charge of Licensing Regulation at NEC, to tell us, number one, how does he see that we implement this Electricity Act? And he's been speaking on this a lot, very, very wonderfully. And the various state electricity markets implemented in a way that we have very little or no friction or conflict, but we have more of convergence, consensus, and in particular, that we don't drive away investors and probably how also to achieve scale.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think the law cannot push our intentions. As a people, you need to decide what it is you want to do and work towards it. So when I just became a lawyer, I went on a tour of the United States Supreme Court as a new week. And the old man who took us on the tour had worked there for many years and now retired, and all he does is he does the tours. And one of the things he told me that day that struck me was that to be appointed as a justice of the United States Supreme Court, there are only two requirements in the United States Constitution. One, you must be recommended by the president. Two, nominated by the Senate. On that tour, I quickly raised up my hand and I said, no. In my own jurisdiction, our constitution says that you must be a legal practitioner, you must have been a legal practitioner for 15 years, standing, blah, 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 blah. And the old man just looked at me and he laughed. And he said that the people who drafted this United States Constitution believed in the power of institutions. And they believed that, one, it will be rare for the president and the Senate to concur on a mistake. Two, that the United States should not be denied the benefit of service of its best at any point in time. And for that same reason, you would see that if you look at the history of their court, they've had non-lawyers sit as Supreme Court justices. They've had non-Americans sit as Supreme Court justices. So when you come back to this, right, we tend to be too overly prescriptive in how we draft our law. And we do not believe in the strength of institutions and the strength of capacity of those we are putting to run institutions. And believing that the people who get there will take the right decision at the right time. So you can't always draft everything into a piece of legislation that will cover every scenario, because you cannot envisage every scenario that will come into play. Now, the situation we find ourselves today is that we have a constitutional provision, and the Constitution is the ground norm, is the principal law of Nigeria. Every law takes its source from that law. Now, what the Constitution says now is that there's been a delineation, right? Exclusive list as concerns power is strictly nuclear energy. Then there's the concurrent list, right? The concurrent list states what the federal government can do. Maintain the national grid, 1. 2, generation and transmission, and goes on. And it has also donated powers to states what the state can do. So for this to work, all of us in the room have to say, okay, I'm a state. This is my responsibility. How do I perform my responsibility to the best ability possible? And the federal government too states that this is my responsibility. How do I perform this? We've gotten to the point that we vilify concepts without understanding what those concepts are. I was with a senior judge in Akwa Ibom a few months ago, and he was telling me that this national grid is a problem. It's a problem. And I told him, my lord, the national grid is in roads, you have trunk A, B, C, and trunk A, B, and C roads. The trunk A roads are the responsibility of the federal government, which basically link the entire country together. The trunk B roads are the roads that link the state together into the trunk A road. And your trunk C road is the road in front of your house. That is the responsibility of the local government that takes you on the next road. So if you do not have a trunk A road, you don't have a country. Right? So somebody has to be for running that grid, that belt, and the state can feed on. Right? We have efficient interconnections that if there's a problem in one place, you are feeding up from another place. And it works. So the law, as far as the sector is concerned, cannot envisage problems. We that have been mandated to come into the sector either as elected officials or appointees have a role to play in, 1, educating the people. And I think the greatest hindrance we face is the issue with the political economy, because people believe that power is free. Power should be free. People believe that the cost for power in Nigeria is too expensive without a basis, right? And when you tell them that, wait a minute, even our Band A tariff is one of the cheapest on the African continent, they'll tell you that the economic parameters are different. And we need to engage people to understand that, okay, why is Nigeria different? Do we have better gas infrastructure than any other jurisdiction? Do we have local ability, right, for the manufacturing of requirements that we need in the sector? So the conductors, the pylons, what you need, are we making them here without having to import them? So educating Nigerians on this is what it takes, this is what must be done, is a key role that we have to play in this room, either as appointees or elected officers coming into the sector, right? Then it's also important that the issue we have, that I had personally, was that we didn't have a clear sunset for this, right? This issue of we have 3 states that have gone and everybody's coming at its own pace. I think that was that if with benefit of hindsight, we could have done better. We should have had a clear cutoff date that One, by March 2025, 30th of March 2025, or 30th of June 2025, all states must have their laws in place, regulators in place. This is the arrangement for what is going to happen with the federal subsidy, and this is what we're going to do going forward, right? We can't have this this piecemeal approach, right? You see the proposal that the Commissioner from Ekiti proposed. Commissioner, you're not a lawyer, but I'll tell you that your proposal cannot work in law, because once we have transitioned, right, I have no jurisdiction. I have no powers, right? No. You can't donate it to me, because the federal government, you see, you cannot donate to me powers that I do not have. You see, the Constitution, those powers, you see, are your exclusive powers, right? In that schedule, the Commission would only be responsible until such a time as the National Assembly decides to create a regulator for the FCT, would only be responsible for the FCT. But once we've taken all the steps, the federal government does not have any ANERC to be determining what your tariff should be in your state. That is your exclusive responsibility as far as the Constitution of Nigeria is today. So please, Honorable Commissioner, get your people to start working on the model on how you will ensure that comes into play. So on the issue of conflicts, I think it's really understanding how we want to relate with ourselves. Once we adopt the approach of team spirit, cordiality, and wanting to work as a team, no matter what problem arises, we can sit at a table and agree that, oh, this is the way we should go. If we choose to ignore, at the end of the day, it will go to court. I remember one of the first opinions I wrote when I started practicing was on this issue of national lottery. And at that point in time, President Obasanjo had started it, and we had a client who came to us. And we looked at him, we said, the federal government has no jurisdiction. It has taken us over 20 years to arrive at the Supreme Court verdict of yesterday. And with incurred costs, we'd established a natural lottery commission, infrastructure at the center. So let's have that objective of wanting a better Nigeria and having that mindset when we engage ourselves, that what this law, how will it work for us, regardless of how perfect or imperfect it may be.
All right, that's very, very interesting. The focus of the intervention by the commissioner is collaboration, which actually this forum has taken a bold step by having the forum of commissioners of energy and power in the country. I cannot overemphasize the importance of that body as we go through this transition process, because that's basically what the regulator that has been doing this for years is now saying, that that is the way forward. Because we have a precedent in the Joint Tax Board. You see that there's very little conflict out of tax issues, because the Joint Tax Board on tax matters, they work very hard to work cohesively. But I don't want to believe that it's all going to be smooth sailing. And now I want to really I want every panelist, because we have about 15 more minutes to go. I want to get everybody's input from across the states. The issue of tariff. The truth about it is that we can't wish investment. Investment is money. It's actual cost. And then how do you take it out? And I know that as each state is thinking to, oh, we want to attract investors, the political infrastructure is being set in place by setting up all these agencies. So now, how do you intend to make sure that the investors come? Okay, I heard the Honorable Commissioner from Ekiti State mention the issue of subsidy, and I know he's referring to the Power Consumer Assistance Fund. By the way, states also can decide to contribute to that fund. It's not just a federal matter anyway, so we are clear on that. The Honorable Commissioner from Taraba also referred to it. But the truth is that the tariff is a decision that you need to make within your state, and the collection is from people within your state. So within the short time we have, I would like to understand, how does each state, represented on the panel, before I come back to the regulator, intend to address the issue of tariff and then investment? I'll start with Ekiti State, then Taraba State, come back to the Honorable Commissioner, to the Honorable Chairman of the House Committee, and then then we round up.
Yeah, thank you. First, our concept is that there should be a state grid and a national grid, side by side, and that the tariffs of the state grid will be determined by the regulatory board, clearly. And the gold standard for that is cost-reflective tariff. And only those who, through certain objective means, will require subsidy, will be given subsidy, not just a flat subsidy issue that has been reigning. So, state grid, we know there will be subsidies, but it will not be, subsidies will not be at the forefront of every decision making about that. Our point about the national grid is that you cannot determine tariffs when you do not have all the costs that go into that tariff determination. You say that there's a national grid that TCN, we do not have, the states do not have any control over TCN. There are still legacy consumers who will be taking electricity from the national grid. You now expect the state to determine the tariff for those who are taking electricity from the national grid that we as the state do not have control over. So when I say we're donating the power, it's not flippant. It is the fact that if, for example, you had indicated that all states by a certain date should have their laws, should be independent, and all of us should determine, we'll be happy to do that. But provided some states do not have their laws, take electricity from the grid, you are determining their tariffs, we say we will go with your tariffs until such a time. I don't think it is flippant.
It's not. So let's take the point from Taraba State, how they're addressing that. The Ekiti State position is that, okay, they're going to have a state grid, and then within that state grid, there has to be cost-reflective tariff, and then they determine a bucket that will require subsidies. And then going forward, we will deal with the issue, one of the areas of conflict he has identified, which again, the body of commissioners we need to now take on board, which is transmission costs. How do you deal with that at the state tariff level? Okay, Taraba State.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Ekiti, HC Ekiti, for explaining a bit of that. And for Taraba State, is a bit similar, but not holistically. So for tariff, when we came on board, there's a slogan that always goes through. And from the ministry's perspective, we always used to say, we don't have a choice but to transition. The state does not have a choice but to transition. And we recognize that the state is, it's a rural state, when the Commissioner Defe was highlighting about all states at this point, you must move at this pace, you must move at that pace. Not all states will be able to move at the pace that you're putting down. And I think that is something that was recognized by the National Assembly. Because I'm sure one or two persons must have brought up such suggestions. Then secondly, understanding that my state is a rural state, and we have a number of communities that are not connected to the grid. That's why I talked about off-grid solution. And that's why I also talked about our energy resources. The tariff on hydro is different from the tariff for gas, is different from the tariff of a majority of other energy resources. So we already understand that aspect. And we already understand the aspect that the government will play. Because the government has already been playing in the energy sector either ways. So getting in right now with the transition market is not a newbie. Thirdly, we also have private investors that are coming in, and we have clusters that are being created. Understanding the economics that works with, when you're setting up your tariff. The market is being created already, where you as a Genco, as a distribution company, you already know that this cluster is going to be at this rate, is going to be at this level, while this other cluster is going to be at this rate, is going to be at this level. And that's why I highlighted previously to say the politics and the regulation, there's a clear line. Thank you.
Very excellent. So basically, there's not going to be like a uniform tariff. And I need to thank NEC for that, because I take a cue that by creating bands at the national level prior to the transition, the present NEC is already thinking ahead so that the regulators that are coming up will understand that it may not be one bucket fits all. And that is what I hear the Honorable Commissioner from Taraba saying. Now, the Honorable Member and Chair of the House, I know you have passed your law, but when the Honorable Commissioner for Power now comes back to you, and you are now facing an election, remember what you just told us, and you understand that, I mean, like I said, Lagos has the 6th largest economy in Africa, but you're facing a real political issue along with your other elected representatives. And you know that if you don't address this, it's going to create a material risk in the investment profile. How quickly do you think that the political will be there to make sure you push through? Because this is not an easy question. Because I have always known that tariff and politics don't really mix. It causes riots. So how much muscle do you think you have with your colleagues to push through reforms that require changes?
Just tell us how much you will increase the budget of Lagos so that we can assist to
I don't think you want to increase your budget as much as Lagos budget. Budget is an estimate, right? Except you have the resources to fund your budget. You can have a budget of 20 trillion, but how well will it perform? Very quickly to the question. I would have loved my commissioner to be on seat while I answer this question, because I am sure he'll be interested in how I answer this question. Because the issue of subsidy was a major conversation during the process of passing our law. In my opinion, as the chairman of the committee, I believe that one of the problems we have in the industry today is as a result of subsidy. We understand that subsidies are not sustainable, especially looking at the present reality. However, in passing our law, we've tried to make it as flexible as possible. We want it to be, and that's what it is. It's a political decision to decide if you want to subsidize or not. We're in a situation where we have everything stated in our law to say no to subsidy. That's the stand of my commissioner, that we should not create room for subsidy at all. What I said in that section is, if we have a government in power today and decides that a new governor comes in on board and says, I want to subsidize power, it is not affordable to the people, and we should be able to do something for them. Do we have to go back to amend our law again? So in making our laws, we have also tried to make the commission that will come on board very independent and strong. Most of these decisions will be made through their regulation. Some of these decisions will be made through their regulation to determine the way to go. We understand what is going on. We understand how things are happening. But I am just one member in the House of 40 that may be abreast of so many things going on.
Yes. Anyway, thank you very much. The point he made about subsidy and the way that Lagos State tried to resolve it by letting it be dealt with through regulation is something that I recommend others take forward. But finally, I want Commissioner Dafe to speak to us about tariff issues and investment, just as maybe as a form of recommendation, because you've already done it at the federal level by using bans. How do you what do you recommend to the commissioners are here to make sure that on a going forward basis, regulation don't kill off investment through this tariff structure? Okay.
Yeah, thanks. In making your answer and giving your answer or response, I just want you to be realistic. You and I in this country, and we know that Band A customers are essentially, whether we like it or not, the noble rich. And yes, we've talked about anchor off-takers of power. So they are supposed to be the anchor off-takers of power in the present circumstance. But you and I know very well that a good number of Band A customers have actually said, applied, and insisted that they should be, one, off hooked on the basis of that they can meet that. Two, again, because of the availability of the power and all that. So now we're talking of power for all in terms of even meeting the rural communities. With all due respect, we all have rural communities, agri communities, and all that. How do we see the socioeconomics, the realism of this, the possibility of people without a firm term salary? And most importantly, and I've asked this question a number of times, what happens to the bucket of money called subsidy that was hitherto superintended over by the federal government? What happens to that bucket of money? Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to answer this question without answering the question. So the first point I would make, and I think all you said, right? There are certain commonalities. First of all governments exist. All governments all over the world exist for two things: welfare and security of their people. All governments. That is the principal function of government. If you cannot ensure welfare and security of your people, you do not have a government. That's your principal focus. So, in all that has been said, I would give you, we started this journey in 2013. And this journey was going well until our learned friend goes to court. One man goes to court. My name is Toluwani Adebi, approaches the court, takes a writ, and the court rules in his favor. That singular decision, right, took us off track. Before that, Nigerians had received the reforms well. Tariff review were even done during elections. It wasn't a thing. It wasn't a thing. But that singular judgment, for a couple of years, we couldn't do tariff reviews, and this issue of market shortfall, tariff shortfall, we started discussing all manner of shortfalls, and government had to intervene to the tune of over 2 trillion naira to bridge that gap. So no matter what it is we do, we need to be mindful that government has a responsibility to its people. Now, the regulator exists. They will tell you, when I started this job, the first course I went for, they said the definition, a regulator is somebody who disappoints everybody at a rate which they can endure. The regulator is there to disappoint the customer, because the customer wants power for free. And it will tell you that no, you must pay this amount. The investor wants to charge the highest price possible. The regulator tells you that no, you will only give you a reasonable rate of return for operating efficiently. So you are basically there to temper everybody. The policy side and the elected side of government has to be ready to, one, provide those assurances to investors that no matter what it is we do, if it costs 150 naira or 50 naira for 1 kilowatt hour of energy, we will ensure that you make that return. That is, once you were able to do that, and you can now design that, okay, this is our subsidy policy, right? These are the vulnerable members of society. These are the people that we need to cover. And you can cover them. Investors will come. From a demographic standpoint, we are going to be the third most populous country in the world in our lifetime, in everybody's lifetime here. And when you look at our power market, we are trading, our national market is we are trading the volume of energy that a city in India is trading, not a state, a city. So there's a lot of opportunity. But no one is going to come in, right, unless he knows that I can make a return. And the only way a developing economy like ours, nobody's going to believe us if you say, I'm going to expose our market to cost-reflective tariff, because people can pay, right? But we need to have means to say, yes, you can come in, and whatever it is, right, we will put in place the required support to ensure that everyone levels up. Yeah. That way, we can move forward.
I think that's a good place to stop. Sorry, I don't think we have time for Q&A. The time for my panel has passed. There are nuggets that we've gotten from all the speakers, but I think the most important is the fact that don't completely erase tariff immediately. I think the model of legacy works. Put it in a regulation, and if you need to introduce it at your state level to cover the most vulnerable segment, then let the regulators do that through regulation. I think on that point, we can say we've come to the end of this panel discussion, and I want to thank all of you for the time you've given to us.
Thank you very much. Can we please applaud all our panelists and, of course, the moderator, as they will be taking a group photograph. I would like to request the Chairman Forum of Commissioners, Prince, to please join them. And thank you very much. Please note that you can go for your health check outside, and of course, after now we'll be going for lunch, and thereafter we'll reconverge for the afternoon session. I hope we are having a great time at this forum. We'll applaud, can we please applaud the panelists and of course our moderator. Thank you very much. That was quite in-depth and insightful. Please, we'll be moving out now for our lunch, and please ensure you maximize the health stand for you to get your health checked. Thank you very much. We'll reconvert very soon for the afternoon session. Thank you. Thank you.
I told please let us pass friends. I said please because I don't like killing Africans. But he wouldn't stop, and I ain't Ice Cube. But I had to take the brother out for being rude. And like I said before, I was mad by then. It took 3 or 4 cops to pull me off the hill.
Kindly note that as soon as you come out of the hall, on your right hand side you will see the health people where they will be checking your vitals. Thank you very much.
If I tell you now, will you keep on loving me? If I tell you how I feel, will you keep bringing out the best in me? You give me the sweetest taboo.
Check. Second mic. Second mic.
Sweetest taboo.
I'd like to crave your indulgence. Please, all participants, please let's move for our lunch. Please, participants only, please. We'll need to fix the hall for the next session. Thank you very much as you are there. Thank you very much.
You don't
strong and tight. Together as one, love to shine like diamond eyes. And I'll show you sweet memories that you wanted me. Because I can brighten up your days. And when you're feeling bad, I put a smile on your face. Can you tell me what grace must I put to make you see things? Come into my life, I got so much love to show you. Come into my life, boy, I adore you. Come into my life, I got so much love to show you. Come into my life, boy, I adore you.
Someone to count on in a world ever changing. Here I am, stop where you stand. What you need is a lover, a man to take over. Oh girl, don't look any further. Strange when you think of the chances that we both be in a state of mind, too cool to be careless, looking for the right thing. Oh baby, don't look any further. Tonight we're gonna taste a little paradise. Rockin' all night long, baby, all night. I'll still be looking in your ebony eyes. And we'll go on and on and on. Deo, mambo chikayo. Well, don't look any further. Don't you look no further. Deo, the champion mayo. Well, don't look any further. Oh, oh, oh. I'm a total Casanova. Me and Romeo ain't never been friends. Can't you see how much I really love you? Gonna sing it to you time and time again. Oh, Casanova, Casanova. Oh, Casanova, Casanova. Every man deserves a good woman, and I want you to be my wife. Time is so much better spent, baby, with a woman just like you in my life. So let me love you, fill you up inside. I want to hold you, baby. So let me squeeze you. Don't you know that I'll get down on my knees for you, baby? You see, I ain't much on Casanova. Me and Romeo ain't never been friends. Can't you see how much I really love you? Gonna sing it to you time and time again. Oh, Casanova, Casanova. Casanova.
sometimes and you can get discouraged when it seems as though our working lives are keeping us apart. Put your trust in me, baby, don't you worry. And it won't